Live streaming to YouTube.
Uh-oh.
So, hello world, I'm going to confirm that on my phone by turning down the sound so we don't kill people's
While
ears.
you wait, I'm going to show off this boss lady mug.
You're such a boss lady, Chris.
It's blurred.
Yes, I am. For anyone who tuned in right at the beginning, they get to see that I have a boss lady mug.
Right,
It's so awesome that Skype censored it. Skype censored your logo.
I got a notification from YouTube. I also have this cool custom Lego spaceship that I made.
All right,
You can tell pandemic has been going well for me.
Fit and crop, fit and crop. That's better. All right, and we want to do full screen mode. Enter full screen. Okay, yep, we are live. And I can't tell if anybody's in there yet.
For the purposes of recording, we should probably still do the general intro, because then you could just cut everything off before this.
Yep, and people don't need to see my face. They'll see a little face. I put my face near the camera because I tend to look at myself because I want to see how bad I look. And then, yeah, so I'm gonna.
These lines are bothering me. I really hope it's just Skype.
Yep. So.
Working fine earlier.
We'll find out in a week.
So I'm looking at on my phone who's in there, and so far it's one person. Anyway, if you're watching the stream, we'll get started in just a moment. Right now we're just kind of working out the whole YouTube stuff and live streaming, and I'm actually going to make sure we share it in the various places. So yeah, we have 3 minutes.
I'm pulling stuff up so I can look at comments as well, in case someone comes in here, but I'm sure you'll catch them first, because I'll have my eyes on the document.
I'm actually going to step away, and I want you guys to keep talking. I just want to see how it's working.
Oh no, he left us alone with his YouTube channel.
I know, you'd think that he would have learned.
Wow. So...
We've really.
All right, so here's our opportunity to tell everyone about our editing services and why they should all work with us.
Here comes shameless self-promotion on Writer's Row.
We both have books that you can find on Amazon. Just Google our names on Amazon. I guess Amazon search
them on Amazon.
Yes, exactly. I'm sure Google loved that.
Well, YouTube is owned by Google, so.
This is true.
So maybe we're boosting our YouTube credibility by using their name. Google, Google, Google.
Do you think they have that? That's a good question. Do you think YouTube has that advanced of algorithms that they can detect the words that people are speaking into the videos and use that to optimize search engine functions?
Well, they use that technology to find, like, copyrighted music.
That's true.
So I don't see why not.
So we think, DC, our theory is, while you're gone, we said the word Google about 20 million times, and we think that maybe that'll boost the search engine algorithm for YouTube for you.
Got it.
Just by saying the word Google.
I'll take what I can get.
And for anyone who was on the stream during these first few minutes, we're sorry.
I'm not sorry. Speak for yourself.
You really should be sorry. This is the quality content that no one desires.
I'm not.
And we actually do have our first chat. It is from Mrs. Y. Mrs. Y is everyone's friend. Mrs. Y, you might be the only person here right now. That's okay. We appreciate everyone. But
we are a little
we're also right at the top of the hour, so I assume people are going to be coming in. Of course we missed you, Mrs. Y. And we appreciate you hanging out as long as you do. If you got any editing questions, drop those in the chat for sure. Otherwise, we're going to start digging into a real manuscript here in just a moment that someone is going to pull up.
Yeah, I have it ready for when we go live. I am just going to share this dream in a spot real quick. So that's weird to see my face on the screen.
Right.
Oh, Ashley Nicole's joining us as well.
Rut-row.
Hey, your manuscript was awesome to work on. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if we made it clear in the video, but it was awesome.
We had a lot of fun with that.
All right. So, what are we doing here? Okay, so before we dive into the actual manuscript that we have chosen, we should probably reveal the secret prize word.
Oh. The super secret prize word.
Yeah, so if you're tuning in to this live stream, or you haven't watched the recordings yet, or you have watched the recordings, or you're watching this as a recording, during the first 2 editing episodes of this series, we dropped a few hints about a secret word that is, if you got it, then you would be entered into the drawing to receive a free manuscript critique. And a few times we are a little bit more blatant than others, especially during the second episode when DC rudely interrupted Meg's content edit. But Meg, do you want to tell people what our secret code word was?
I would love to reveal the secret code word. It's something that Chris and I both advocate for very fiercely, and a few of you did guess it. The secret word was Oxford comma.
Yes.
Yeah, the ever-argued Oxford comma, and both Ashley and Serena guessed Oxford comma, which means that we have to do face-off between the two of them, where they write a 500-word essay arguing why they deserve to get a manuscript critique. No, that's not what we're doing. We're going to do a random number generator right now to decide between the two of them. Or we could flip a coin or something else entirely. But yeah, let's pull up a random number generator. Serena gets 1, Ashley gets 2. And I'm going to generate. If Serena 1, Ashley 2, generate 2. Ashley wins. Congratulations, Ashley. You get a free manuscript critique.
Woohoo!
Woo!
Did we say Ashley? Sorry, I was looking at something.
Yes,
I'm
Ashley.
Keep an eye on the
Ashley.
stats.
Ashley wins. Congrats. And Serena, your book sounds great too.
So Ashley, we'll reach out to you after the live stream to talk a little bit more about what you're going to be receiving, etc., etc.
Yeah, and
congratulations.
As a final reminder to everyone else who submitted sample sections from their manuscripts, we'll be sending you some feedback regardless, even if you aren't one of the 2 that were in the previous 2 videos or that is going to be edited today. And the person who was edited today also receives a free manuscript critique. And we have, I will pull that up now, we will reveal that person. I believe DC is ready to notify that person.
Before you do that.
Yes, what?
I have to shamelessly plug the channel.
Yes, oh, that's important. All that stuff's important.
Shamelessly plugging the channel. So, if you're watching, I'm guessing you're subscribed. If not, please hit that subscribe button. Definitely helps me out as I build more content like this for you all. And hit the thumbs up on this live stream. If you like the live stream that we're doing and you'd like me and other professionals in the writing community to do things like this, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. That helps a lot as well. The notification button is also good if you want to know when new videos are uploaded, if you want to know when we go live. Make sure to hit that notification bell as well. And I think that's all I got. So thank you for giving me some time on my channel.
I guess we can allow it.
Yes. And with that, here comes the big reveal on the work we will be doing tonight. Did you want to go ahead and do that reveal?
Yeah, so the way that this is going to work is we have one sample selected I've already done the line edits a few days ago, just so we don't have too many things going on at once. But then Meg will be walking through the content edit, but you'll also be able to see the line edit feedback that I provided, and we'll talk through that as that happens as well. But so without further ado, we are doing a sample of Shadowed Brilliance by Gloria Bottleman.
And
share screen.
So Chris actually selected this sample and brought it to me.
Oh, that is the wrong screen. There we go. That is the wrong screen.
Chris, I'm going to ask you to zoom in quite a bit.
Yes.
Almost as big as we can get it while keeping your comments on the screen, just for people just to have accessibility in mind.
Yep. We can go a little bit further because we can always scroll over to the comments if we need to.
And you can hide my face. People see that enough on this channel.
Do they?
They do.
Don't you think that's why they subscribed?
No, that's in spite of
To
why
see
they
your
subscribe.
face?
They're like, I guess. But anyway.
Your stylish glasses and beard?
Right.
That's it. That's why they're following you.
My mediocrity on camera. Yeah, that's why they follow me. Anyway, let's stop talking about me and let's take a look.
Yeah, so we're going to just dive right in. I think let's do this paragraph by paragraph so we can do the line edits, and then, Meg, we can give content feedback paragraph by paragraph after we talk through the line edits. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me. Do you want to switch off reading it?
Sounds great.
You want to go first?
More rain. First paragraph over. What are your thoughts? I actually really like this. I like these, it's a very good way to just, start the mood of a scene.
It is, and it tells you two things. One, it's been raining, without saying that directly, and two, how the character feels about it.
Yes.
More rain.
Yes.
Absolutely. More rain.
Okay, so we'll go on to the next paragraph. That doesn't count as one. It drowned the cobblestone street, casting a dreary gloom about an already dreary building. I've replaced that with throughout an already dreary building. Felt like that was a more apt preposition to use there. 3 stories. Originally, there was a comma and very, very old comma. I've replaced that with M dashes because that in very, very old is much more interruptive of the sentence. And so 3 stories and very, very old. It only leaned a little, with a basement apartment surprisingly impervious to filling with its frequent, murky visitor. Pouring from clouds so gray they turned the skies black, the scarce lampposts, never quite as well tended as those further within the town's walls, flickered out with a hiss. So this, we're going to pull over to some of the comments that I've pulled off to the side. We have a sentence that is very long and also with some thoughts in it that are a little bit disconnected from one another. So, the pouring from clouds so gray they turned the skies black. That thought is very not related to the rest of the sentence. I'm recommending over on the side here for Gloria that she should probably parse those 2 thoughts out, build a separate sentence around that thought of pouring from clouds so gray they turn the skies black, or she could delete it entirely and just have, but I like this, the scarce lampposts, never quite as well tended as those further within the town's walls, flickered out with a hiss. That thought right there is great, good description. Flickered out, or you could do extinguished with a hiss, so that it's one verb instead of this flickered out prepositional phrase thing. Nightfall arrived hours ago, and for a moment, comma, a hush settled over the town of Gadra like a drawn-in breath. Period. Hard stop. The world went dark. And so this is one of those stylistic edits that I'm providing that's a suggestion to the author. Instead of drawn-in breath as the world went dark, the world went dark kind of gives a full stop to this descriptive paragraph, especially before we actually dive into a much closer point of view with the third-person character that's coming up, Lux. So that's
pointed out something as well, which I think we talked about in one of the previous videos. The scarce lampposts are not the noun pouring from the clouds.
Yes,
which
that's
sentences
the main
structured
reason why
like
I
this.
changed that. Yep.
And that would be, so Chuck, that would be those disconnected thoughts there. The structure of that sentence makes it sound like there are lampposts falling from the sky, which we can assume from context is not the author's intent.
Or if that is the author's intent, then the sentence probably should be restructured anyways. So, Meg, what are your thoughts on this introduction paragraph?
So I feel like this is a much more eloquent rendition of "It was a dark and stormy night."
Yes.
Which I think we talked about with DC a couple times. But I agree with Chris that having "the world went dark" as a little punctuation at the end of this paragraph makes it a lot more punchy. And I love this opening because it starts with more rain and then goes on to sort of elaborate. It's dark, it's gray, it's wet. Yeah, and Mrs. Y says it's a bit exhausting to read before the editing suggestions with the disconnected thoughts. So this is one of the things that we really strive to improve upon with any type of editing is keeping the reader's attention, keeping the reader at ease while reading, varied lengths in sentences, giving it a cadence and a flow, so that the content comes forward instead of the prose. Your prose should be pretty much invisible, unless it's someone noticing something that is stunning about it. Which I think the line about scarce lampposts, I don't know if that would stand out to everyone, but anyone who notices it, I think, would say, "Wow, that's a really good description."
Yeah, I think one of the things I really like about the mentioning of the scarce lampposts is because that's a piece of description I don't ever think about. As an author myself, I never think about like the lighting of the street. Like that's actually like a really good detail to include there, because actually, I mean, if you think about it, most of us are also used to lampposts being a thing in our neighborhoods, that we don't really think about them being there until they're not there, and then you're like, wow, this street is really dark. And I think that's it's a good detail to include there. Also, the use of the term lampposts already is kind of setting the scene that maybe this isn't the modern era, because it's like lamp instead of like light post. And so like it's subtle
out in the
language
rain.
use. Yeah, exactly. Also, then obviously the name of town Gadra also immediately signals that this is definitely not the United States, and it's most likely a fantasy world. And spoiler, she told us that this is a young adult horror fantasy. So this is definitely setting the tone for a dark setting.
Mrs. Y said it's a good description, but to me, as a reviewer, this description is like looking at a cluttered makeup table. The writing has a lot going on. It's all beautifully written, but it's cluttered. So something important to note is that that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to organize everything for the author, with the author. Kind of like, like, you know, when you have like professional like interior designers and professional organizers come into your house, and you know, here's how you can fit all your socks into one drawer, and then it's easier to go through, and you know, easier for you to maintain, easier for you to pick the stuff that you need and find the stuff that you need. So that's sort of our goal whenever we do an edit of a book, is to go from having the cluttered makeup table to having everything neat and organized and having the vanity open for you to use.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to bring up. And personally, I do like this opening paragraph. I think it's not too long that it's overwhelming with that sort of like gratuitous description. Though if like the rest of the first 2 pages was like this, then it would definitely be overwhelming in that sense of like too much description. But like this is only 5 lines, and in my opinion, if you got 5 lines of good description like this to just throw at the beginning of something, it could work if you shift into narrative right away.
So,
which it does in the next paragraph.
Before we get to that, Chuck had a question earlier. He felt like the if you scroll up, he felt like the pouring from clouds so gray they turn the sky's black. He felt like that was describing the scarce lampposts based on the way the sentence structure is set up. Can you guys talk a little bit about that?
We just did.
Did I miss it?
Yeah, I
Must
think
have.
we did. we did a few minutes ago.
Whoops. You did it right before
as
Mrs.
you've
Y.
seen, DC Wright-Hammer is not listening to his own live stream.
All right, I'm multitasking, which means I'm doing nothing well. So now I'm curious, what was the answer to it?
So So I addressed this. So that it's definitely disconnected from the rest of the sentence. And so the suggestion is you parse these two thoughts out in two separate sentences.
Got it.
Also, get to Mrs. Y's point about there being too much description potentially going on in this. You could just cut that line entirely and start with the scarce lampposts, because there's already been 2 sentences about rain. So you could just go straight into the scarce lamppost one and just get rid of the additional discussion about the clouds and the rain.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That would be one of those things that we discuss with the author and figure out, kind of get a feel for what they want that paragraph to read like. We never make executive decisions as editors. We only make suggestions for how to improve the prose and how to make the story flow and translate the author's thoughts and feelings into a good paragraph.
That's why track changes is the best feature of Microsoft Word.
Absolutely.
All right.
We ready?
Next paragraph. It's your turn.
Lux felt it moments before it echoed. So the original word here was came, and it's changed to echoed. The knock at her basement door.
Do you want me to talk through my thoughts on that?
Yeah, because I'm confused. Lux felt it moments before it echoed. The knock at her basement door.
So this is like
a comma here that I don't understand.
Which one?
The knock, comma.
So yeah, so this is a I'm doing something that this is a stylistic edit that it would be like, hey, this is an alternative way that you could write these, but not necessary. It's just, especially with you're setting up this character's perspective after this very like dark and dreary paragraph. So Lux felt it, comma, moments before it echoed. Echoed is one verb option. There's actually a lot of verbs that you can inject here, and I would probably actually have a comment off to the side that's just an example of a verb that you could insert. I hate the verb came is a terrible verb to use here, personally. But before it echoed could be like, that actually sets up like this room is got a certain feel to it, how the sound moves through it. But you could also do moments before it arrived, or something. Just, I feel like came doesn't really get the idea that it's sound entering the room. And then the reason why I have a hard period stop here, and then the knock, comma, at her basement door, is this is one of those stylistic fragments where it's like the knock at her basement door. And I guess you don't have to have the comma there, but it's kind of there to like single out the knock as the thing that arrived, because, and this is spoiler for reading the rest of this scene, like someone arriving at her door, at Lux's door, is really important. And so like kind of like honing in on the knock there, I feel like was it was an option to throw out to the author. So that's my logic.
I would, so the way that I would have done this if I was copy editing was, instead of the hard stop, I would have used a colon.
Yeah, colon could work as well.
Because then you're because you're creating that clarity that the thing that she is anticipating is the knock.
Yeah.
Because that's what Mrs. Y pointed out, that she felt what? She basically knew that there was going to be a knock at the door. Despite the late hour, she'd been awake when the street lamps failed, and with the loss of the shoddy free light, the shadows sharpened inside her. And can I just say, that is such a good line. The shadows sharpened inside her. Deep in her bones, she knew. Death traveled tonight.
Pause right there. So this is one of the reasons why I would say probably not have a colon up in the beginning. Mostly
there's one
because
right here.
Yeah, you don't want too many of that type of punctuation mark throughout, just because that's one of those, like, using those specialty punctuation marks, use them when you know how to use them, but if you use them too much, readers will notice just because they're not used frequently, and so it stands out in their mind.
Mr. M dash.
Shut up.
I also approve of the changing of this night to tonight.
Yeah.
Although both of those things indicate a present tense, and the story is in past tense. And I know you hate the word that, but that might be a better term there.
So she knew death traveled that night?
Yeah, because we're not there in the present tense with her. So this night and tonight both indicate here and now.
Yeah, but I think that's one of those things where, even though it is written in the past tense, it is still like the present of the scene. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and like, I wouldn't take it out. That's something that, again, I would just have a note for the author.
Yeah.
Like, however you want to do this. How fast or slowly it moved, or would Reacher change to moved, she didn't always know. But the way the rain pelted her streaked window pane, it whispered, soon, soon, soon. So, Chris has made some changes here for dramatic impact. Moved, obviously, we've talked about this a little bit before. Yes, Mrs. Y, you're absolutely right. That should definitely be used sparingly. It's a sticky word. And then we have word economy as well. Would Reacher change to move? There was something about is not necessary. And since we're creating an ominous air, sometimes less is more, and this is one of those instances. And then against is not necessary either, because it's inferred.
Right, and also just getting the verb pelted closer to window pane. So It's like, especially because pelted is one of those verbs that is
pelted is a great word.
Yeah, it's a verb that almost has the noise in it. Pelted, like, it's like, hitting the window, and so getting it as close to the thing that it's hitting is useful for effect.
And I like the use of the ellipses here to create a little bit of a pause. And then, the way the rain pelted her streaked window pane, it whispered, soon, soon, soon. So you make the connection. You have some independent clauses here, but, well, I guess the way the rain pelted her streaked window pane isn't independent, but you follow it with an independent clause without disconnecting them entirely.
Something to note also, there's another colon sentence here, which would re-emphasize. I mean, I guess if you wanted to throw a colon in almost every sentence of this paragraph, you could.
You could actually take this one out, since the soon, soon, soon is italicized.
Yeah, just do a comma.
Yeah. You could leave the S, that first S, capitalized, and take the colon out, and it's almost like a thought or a speech.
Yeah. Actually, you could just do it whispered, period, and then soon, soon, soon.
Well, that would indicate that it's the character's thought and not something that she's hearing.
That's true. That's true. It would be that way.
But I love this paragraph, mostly for that shadows line.
Yeah.
That's such a good description, and I know you're not familiar with Gloria's writing, and I've actually read something that she's written before, and she has a really good way of describing a darkness growing inside of a person, and I feel like that line right there embodies that very well. I think it's just very apt, and of course, the next description about rain hitting the windows, it really tells you, it really gives you that image in your mind of exactly what's happening in that scene.
Well, and something else that's going on here is that you also are, this imagery is kind of creating an idea of that, like, so Lux, this character, is awake at night late, and like almost gives you this idea that they're anxious or they're like you have this question in your mind: why are they staying up? Why can't they sleep?
Yeah.
Or maybe and there's that thought going on, and also just to lean in on some of the writing of that shadows sentence. So I'm going to point, she'd been awake when the street lights failed, and with the loss of the shoddy free light, the shadows sharpened. You've got
a lot of
5 words that all have that sound that makes that sentence even better, in my opinion. You don't want to do that too much, because purple prose, like, too much of it will overwhelm a reader, but that sentence really is getting at, like, the feeling of the character, I feel.
I agree with you.
So Todd in chat says, I think this night works better than tonight for past tense. Tonight feels far more present, but this doesn't. This in quotes.
That's why, because both of them would really be acceptable, but that's why we leave that to the author. That's why we say, here's my impression, and then we talk it out with the author and let them ultimately decide, because that's very stylistic.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I usually note changes like this, and this is always a thing that is accepted or rejected by an author, is that this is another one of those sticky words like that, this and that, and it's really useful to just point those out so that an author can make the decision, okay, like, so like often a word like this and a word like that, if you control F it in your manuscript, it's going to show up hundreds of times in like your second or third draft, just because it's those words that we go to right away in certain situations. And so pointing out that there's these different options in those instances when an author is using those words can help them make the decision, okay, I've got 400 thises, and I don't want 400 thises. Well, now I've got a choice here, and I can make that choice, sort of thing.
Yeah. So, and it's good to know that it's there, and then decide if that's an instance where you want to keep it or cut it. And just having that option and being made aware that it's there.
Often when I'm doing a line edit, especially if and this isn't really easily noticeable within the first 500 words, but if I'm like 3 chapters in and I've noticed that a word like this is showing up a lot, I'll usually drop a note and be like, hey, I'll be watching for this, but just as a note. And what I'll usually do at that point is like I'll control F the word and see how many times it shows up and just be like, hey, just so you know, this word shows up 450 times. FYI.
So what you're saying, CD, is good advice for authors is to control F themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Everyone should control F themselves from time to time.
Yes. Like Meg made me control F my M dashes.
Yes. And he made me control F my that's.
Yes, exactly. The knock, therefore, was not so unexpected. This is an instance where you've got a few extra words in this sentence. This is a 1-paragraph sentence, but the knock, therefore, was not unexpected. And though it was late, her neighbors asleep, the door rattled and quaked with uncaring ferocity. So this is another instance of word economy where these words that I'm deleting here the sentence still makes sense, it sounds good, but once you delete them and you read the sentence out loud, you don't notice that those words are gone. The knock, therefore, was not unexpected, and though it was late, her neighbors asleep, the door rattled and quaked with uncaring ferocity. Which sounds very different when you have those extra words in there.
It's again, we're taking some of the clutter off the makeup table.
Yeah.
Making it a little bit clearer and more succinct.
Also, this of it at the end, this pronoun, I think is referring to knock, but that knock occurred at the beginning of the sentence, and there's been a lot of nouns since then. So that's also just removing some pronoun confusion.
Yeah, and it's again, it's inferred, so you don't have to have that there.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to do this next one, even though the last one was a sentence? Or should I just keep going? Actually, I don't have any. I actually don't have any suggestions in this one.
Okay, I'll read it then.
Yeah.
Lux lounged in her favorite chair for a few seconds longer, swinging her legs back and forth and scribbling a final thought. She yawned. What a terrible night to die. And she meant it. The streets had to be ankle-deep with water by now, and despite the summer month, the rain was never warm. Ooh. Yeah, I see why you had no suggestions. God, this is a good paragraph. She's sitting in her favorite chair, and there's a suggestion on here. For some reason, Google wants to change this to lounge. I don't know why. Lux lounged in her favorite chair for a few seconds longer. So
I think I know why. I'm pretty sure Lux Lounge is like actually a place.
Oh, okay.
Also, it's probably not detecting that Lux is a name, and so it thinks that you should be referring to the noun as opposed to the verb. Anyways, that's why you should not always trust spell check from Google or Microsoft Word.
Yep. Their suggestions, it's good for sometimes pointing out things that you need to look at, but that doesn't mean that they're right. Scribbling a final thought is also good because that tells us what she's been sitting there doing. She's been sitting there writing her thoughts. And then, what a terrible night to die. Just immediately invokes a whole series of thoughts. You're suddenly very interested in what this character is doing and planning on doing. So we've had a little bit of build up to this with the rain and the darkness and some anxiety and the knock on the door that she's obviously expecting, and she means it. It's a terrible night to die. The streets are ankle deep with water, and the rain is cold. And I really like, despite the summer month, the rain was never warm. And she meant it needed. I don't know if it's necessary, but it adds personality to the sentence. It adds personality to the paragraph. So we talk a lot about word economy. Let's also take a step back and talk about how word economy is not everything.
Yeah.
Just because something isn't needed to make a thought complete doesn't mean it's not needed to make a thought have personality. So having that in this paragraph gives us a little bit more insight into Lux and how she thinks and operates, especially when this is in a third person and we're not going to see everything directly through her eyes. What a terrible night to die. And she meant it. It's not something that you really have to have. You assume if someone's saying something, they mean it, but it suggests so much more about the character.
I think another way to think about this would be if this was in first person, that sentence would read, and I meant it.
Yeah.
And I would 100% say, like, that's the first person narrator saying, and I meant it when I said, what a terrible night to die. And so in this third person narration, and this is getting to be very close third person in the sense that, like, I would say that all of the description we've seen above is really kind of building the voice of Lux and the way that Lux thinks about the world. And so every sentence, if the author does a good job continuously, all of these third person sentences are building the character's voice.
I agree, and Todd made a good point too. You could cut back and forth, swinging her legs back and forth. The back and forth is not necessarily needed because that's what swinging implies.
Yes.
It didn't stand out to me, so there's a good chance that I would leave it in there. But yeah, if you're looking to reduce your word count, that's something that I would cut out.
Well, and it actually builds swinging her legs and scribbling her thoughts. So you get sort of a, instead of the back and forth, which slows down the thought, you get a little bit of symmetry if you have swinging her legs and scribbling her thoughts. But swinging her legs, if you don't put back and forth, and I know she's lounging in a chair, but like, I don't know.
It could imply something else.
It just could get a little big, swinging her legs. The back and forth kind of makes it sound like, I almost picture crossed legs or like doing something normal. So I could see it go both ways. So I think Todd does have a good point there.
One of the things that I'll say about swinging her legs back and forth implies rhythm.
Yeah.
To her swinging of her legs. It makes, and also this is one of those instances where it adds clarity, where it's like, she could just be haphazardly swinging her legs back and forth, kind of like a pendulum, like that sort of, like it gives you that clear that it's kind of intentional. She's doing it back and forth. That's my thought. And also, I wanted to point out one of the streets had to be ankle deep with water by now. Because this third person close third person, the streets had to be ankle deep with water by now is Lux's thoughts about the street, and so it kind of is keeping this had to be by now makes clear that it's her speculation about the water outside.
And I agree, and I would definitely keep that in there.
So, the frantic... Do we have any other thoughts on this paragraph?
Nope.
All right. Actually, I do have a final question. So, actually, no, never mind. Not a question. Okay, the frantic fist outside the door continued. Delete on, just continued. Relentless in its pounding, and Lux worried the old wood would not withstand the continued assault. I think we talked about this two weeks ago, but the began to worry and just replaced with worried. That sort of began to insert verb. You can usually replace with the full form of the verb. It would just be her luck for the door to completely give in to its age and crumble during a veritable downpour, leaving her with no option but to sleep on her kitchen table, period. Or worse. Lux glanced at the dusty alcove where her precious books and loose-leaf pages were stacked only a few inches above the floor. Maybe she should find them a new home after all. It wasn't like it had been her idea to put them there in the first place. So, or worse, I've taken out into a fragment there just because I think that kind of emphasizes that or worse, gives that idea that, like, there's worse situations that she could be in, but which kind of gives that, like, it focuses on this idea that, like, her current situation is crappy, but she knows of a lot worse situations that she could be in. Lux, and then we've got some prepositional changes here. Lux glanced at the dusty alcove, and then also a verb change here. Loose leaf pages were stacked, and because lay is one of those really weird verbs that that's actually, I believe, a present tense version of that verb.
It's also a past tense.
Yes. I don't know if this would be correct here, though. Lay stacked. This is one of those verbs where I usually actually always check myself and Google it again. So
lay is a hard one because it's different if you're talking about self or others. But that's, CD, as you explained to me before, that's a verb that becomes a adverb.
Yeah.
If you have it there.
Works. So, but I think were works here because it's kind of just describing the present situation of these books and loose leaf pages. Were stacked only a few inches, and she had off the floor, above the floor. I feel like is more precise. And then that's all I have for the line edits for the rest of this paragraph.
It sounds to me like I would actually, this is something I'd want to clarify with the author, because this sounds to me like there's the loose leaf pages are literally sitting on the floor and the stack is a few inches thick.
That's actually, that's a great point. This is a great point.
So that's something I would clarify that with the author and just be like, hey, I'm confused about what this sentence means. Let's create some clarity for this.
Because I think what's going on here is that dusty alcove made it sound like it was almost like a built-in bookshelf.
Right, but is there a shelf in there, or is it just an alcove that's on the floor?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something that's something that would just need a little bit of clarity. But I do like that. This is also giving us more insight into Lux as a character, because she is thinking about death and flooding and the fact that there's someone pounding on her door. And her thoughts are, maybe I should move my books in case the water comes in.
Yeah.
Like, that's where she's at right now. It tells us a lot about her mental state, and it's a really subtle thing, but it's really good.
Todd had a question in chat. If you scroll up a little bit, I guess the word continued is used a couple of times close together.
The frantic fist outside the door continued, relentless in its pounding. Oh, the wood would not withstand the continued assault.
I think that's a good thing to bring up. Yeah, you could definitely delete
repeated
the second continued.
You
could just say the old wood would not withstand
the ongoing assault.
Or ongoing assault, or just the assault. I mean, that's an option as well.
Yeah.
So
again, author's choice.
Yeah, because you could also want to repeat continued there to just give just to emphasize the nature of the fist and link it to the assault. I mean, it's kind of clear there that it's both that it is the fist doing the assaulting, but you could just be like, hey, I want to make sure that those are linked together in that way.
But yeah, no, that's a good catch. Good job, Todd.
So we have boom, boom, boom with periods, and then rattle, rattle, rattle with commas. Nice little ambiance description of just giving the sounds themselves. And then, do you want to move on to the next two paragraphs, Meg?
Sure. Letting her head fall back over the armrest, Lux rolled her eyes to the peeled ceiling. If you insist. I do like the I like the nonchalant way, and this is consistent with her attitude in the previous paragraph. Okay, if you insist.
Yeah.
Like, I guess
I have a comment off to the side here that is just, or rolled her eyes and stared at the peeled ceiling. Just because, and I didn't put this in track changes in any way, just because this is an alternative to propose to the author, but
I would say rolled her gaze to the peeled ceiling, or rolled her eyes to stare at the peeled ceiling.
Yeah, just that idea that rolled her eyes to the peeled ceiling, it feels like there's a verb missing there. Like, how do you roll your eyes to the ceiling?
She took her eyes out, yeah. And rolled them like dice.
I mean, I guess you could say Lux rolled her eyes at the peeled ceiling, as if she was, like, annoyed with the ceiling.
Swinging stiffened legs off the chair, she allowed the heavy book in her lap to claim her place on the cushion. She strolled up the few steps to the front door. It hung crooked, warped, and black, and when Lux felt particularly bad about herself, it looked like her heart turned outward for all to see. Thankfully, tonight she'd been too busy for sadness. So you've made some suggestions here. Swinging stiffened legs off the chair.
So the reason why my thought here is that from across the chair, I didn't really understand what that meant. From across, swinging stiffened legs from across the chair.
Yeah.
Off the chair kind of just makes clear that they were up on the chair, and now she's swinging them off of it.
Right. It sounds like she was sitting sideways in the chair and, like, had her legs up on, like, the armrest. Because she's got her head on one armrest and her legs over. So I would actually say swinging stiffened legs from the opposite armrest or something like that. That'd be a workshop thing.
Yeah. With
the author. Because from across the chair is a little vague. She allowed the heavy book in her lap. I would also choose in instead of on to claim her place on the cushion. She strolled up the few steps. I think she chose her front door instead of the, because the few steps to the front door does sound weird when you read it out loud.
That's fair. This is one of those instances where it's like you could have the two pronouns in the sentence, or you could have the two thes, just because it's like it's pretty clear that it is her front door. Right. I think this is one of those where if you don't want the double the, then yeah, use her. But this is just to give that alternative. But I think both work.
It hung crooked, warped, and black, and when Lux felt particularly bad about herself, she sometimes thought... Now, when Lux felt particularly bad about herself already implies that that she thinks this sometimes. So you don't need the sometimes. She thought it looked like her heart turned outward for all to see. Thank you.
Now, I'm actually catching something on the second one.
Yeah.
Instead of looked, you could probably do it felt like her heart turned outward for all to see. If we're doing... yeah, so that's just a note that could be felt. Oh, I don't actually have track changes on.
I would also... I would have a note here on sadness, just to say that that's the impression you got from that.
Yes.
But that there may be more apt words depending on what she's wanting to communicate right there. She's been too busy for angst. That it sounds more angsty to me than sad. Mm-hmm. So that would be something. I agree that all that is probably not the correct use of words. But something to indicate what exactly all that is in Lux's mind.
Though you could use all that if you really wanted to exhibit the type of language that Lux uses.
You could.
If that's the type of lingo that she uses, I don't got time for all that sort of thing. You could be trying to set that sort of.
You could. But I think that as you introduce a character, the more specific you can be with that type of language, the better. Because we're learning about Lux and how she interacts with the world around her. So even though it's good to give an idea of what a character's dialect might sound like, I think it's better to, especially in third person, to give an impression of their thoughts.
Agreed.
Rather than specifics of their dialect.
So... yeah, I 100% agree with that. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on my inclusion of on the cushion up above?
I like that because it's descriptive. Now, this chair might not have a cushion on it, so
Correct.
That's also something that I would say, if, just a comment, if there's a cushion. Or it could be replaced with on the wicker or on the wood or just on the seat.
Yeah.
Wooden seat, whatever type of material is there beneath her at that time.
And
but
also, I think a wood seat makes sense, especially with the stiffened legs description, because it sounds like an uncomfortable chair then.
Yeah. Well, if she's been sitting there for a long time, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I sit poorly in chairs.
Yes.
And when I've had my legs over an armrest for an extended period of time, they get really stiff.
Quite a bit.
You want to read the last paragraph?
Yeah. So, a click of the lock sent the door flinging wide, with only the fireplace from the other room casting any light. I've deleted sort of light, just any light. It took Lux a moment to comprehend what she saw. Reeling, she clapped a hand to her mouth. So let's pull over to the comments I have on the right side.
Sort of is another sticky term.
Yes. So a click of the lock sent the door flinging wide, with only the fireplace from the other room casting any light. So I have a comment off, and this is kind of a content edit, but actually I would say it's a copy edit because it's a consistency and continuity. Mm-hmm. That I have from the other room. How was she reading then? With only the fireplace from the other room casting any light, if the fireplace is all the way in another room, it would be incredibly difficult to read. With that, because that implies that the light is very far away.
From a content perspective in this scene as well, if the door is flinging open and it's storming outside, the wind could blow out her candles. If she's reading or writing by candlelight, you can keep that consistency and have that happen.
Yes, absolutely. So then we have my second comment, a moment to comprehend the scene or recognize the blah, 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 or something else more descriptive, giving our readers a tease of what she saw so that we don't have just what she saw.
Yeah.
Because you've had very close third-person perspective with this character so far, with like their feelings about the room and the description, and their general feelings about death, and so then to like kind of pull away and like just say it took Lux a moment to comprehend what she saw. I guess you could be saying, hey,
dark figure.
Yeah, to comprehend the dark figure.
Yeah.
Or comprehend her visitor.
Something to indicate, to tease at what she's looking at, because these first 500 words are your hook. And you want to be mysterious, but not too vague, because if you're too vague, you lose your traction.
Well, and one of the things that's hard about a 500-word sample always is we don't know what comes after. We don't know if this is the end of a chapter, which that would be a very short chapter. Not impossible, but like a 2-page chapter. But there very well could be a paragraph that comes right after this that does provide that next little bit of detail, which may not be that big of a deal. But reeling, she clapped a hand to her mouth, almost does feel like a finality, like suspense moment where you are giving a hard stop. So I would be curious to know whether this is the end of a initial really short chapter sort of thing. I'm guessing not. I'm guessing that there's a paragraph right after this.
So Todd,
I would imagine so.
Sorry, Todd says the first sentence could be altered to a click of the lock flung the door wide. So taking sent out and turning flinging into flung.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that works too.
But the click, that makes click the. I can't think of what the right term is, but it makes it sound like the click is what's opening the door. But the way that it's phrased right now actually does that as well.
Right.
With the click of the door, with the click of the lock, the door flung wide.
Yeah, you could rephrase it that way. With a click of the lock, the door flung wide. I don't really mind this phrasing because I think it's not confusing. You know what the door is flinging wide. A click of the actually yes, no. I'm going to argue for this for how she has this written. A click of the lock sent the door flinging wide. We already know it's storming outside. If this is we know it's a decrepit, not very well built basement. If the lock is the only thing keeping the door on its hinges, the moment the lock clicks unlocked, the door flings wide because the wind blows it open. Yep. That's my argument to defend the way that she has this phrased.
Yeah, I'm just thinking because I really wouldn't change it just because it's one of those things where technically yes, you could alter it until Kingdom Come, but with a read-through, with a verbal read-through, it doesn't stand out. A click of the lock sent the door flinging wide. It flows just fine. You know what it is. And that's one of those things where if you're really wanting to zero in and alter things, you could change it. But I would leave that one alone.
Also, there's a few verbs that I don't like the sound of, and verbs that end with UNG, I don't like the sound of. Flung, sung, rung, hung. Like, I don't know. That's just I think that's just a personal preference on my part.
I think so.
But and this may be just me being obstinate at 9:54 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I will comment on this entire sample. I will say that this type of line edit that I'm providing here, this is already a very, very well written sample. It is. And so this is the type of edits that I would be providing that are like very much like, hey, honestly, I don't know how much this wouldn't need this intensive of an edit, to be honest, probably. This is really kind of trying to point out every possible thing for the purposes of a live stream. This is very good writing.
There are definitely places where it's a little cluttered, and even the best of writing has clutter in it. You know, the first couple times you go through it, but it is extremely well written for whatever stage it's at. There's just small things here and there that can make it flow and move.
Yes.
So much more smoothly.
Well, and I was going to say, Meg, that to have this much content, have this much developmental feedback in the first 500 words is pretty great. Like, the fact that you've already got character and you've got setting and you've got all this, you're already kind of in it. If you can do developmental editing on the first 500 words, the author is doing something right.
Absolutely. There's so much tone set immediately in such a small sample. I already know what everything in this scene looks like. I know what the main character's attitude and demeanor is.
Yeah.
With barely any action. She's hardly done anything. All she does is get up and say, I think she has one line.
Well, let's see. Yes, what a terrible night to die.
2 lines.
If you insist.
Yeah, no, and yeah, Todd makes a good point. It is good to be looking for places where you can practice word economy.
Yes.
I think that's just a good habit to be in general. Looking for places where you can cut words, but it can also handicap you. And one of the things that makes sort of a difference between a good author and a good editor is that an author turns that filter off when they're going through and doing their first few drafts, because you don't get awesome lines like the shadows inside of her sharpened if you're thinking about word economy. So what Gloria's doing is thinking about how, what words can I use to correctly convey the tone in this scene, and the rest of it, we can change later. We can cut down the extras later.
And also, there's a thing that word economy can sometimes get you into really unfortunate situations. So, returning to that shadows sharpened line. So, you could be trying to pursue really, really, really aggressive word economy and actually completely change the meaning of a sentence on accident. So, despite the late hour, she'd been awake when the street lamps failed, and with the loss of the shoddy free light, the shadows sharpened. Now imagine if you cut inside her. You could. The sentence would still be completely coherent, would still be a really cool sentence, but you are losing a very significant amount of the meaning of this sentence by cutting inside her, which you could, if you were just self-editing for word economy and going really fast, and it's been a while since you wrote this sentence and you forgot why it was really good, you could just be like, oh, I'm going to delete inside her. And now you're just talking about the shadows outside.
Which is something that, doing a self-edit, I might cut that out if I wasn't paying that much attention and just looking for sticky words. I would just cut that out.
Yeah.
And that it would lose some impact, because the shadows sharpened inside her, that's one of the best lines I've read in a long time. And those 2 words, which I would normally cut out of a sentence, make it great. If you follow my meaning.
Yeah. I want to know more about the town of Gadra.
You want to know more about what?
The town of Gadra.
Well, the good thing is, Chris, that we get to read all of this.
This is true. Though we won't be doing this intensive of line edits with a manuscript critique, because a manuscript critique is... So, Meg, do you want to talk through what we're going to do in a manuscript critique for both Ashley and Gloria?
Absolutely. So, both CD and I will be reading through the complete manuscript, and the type of feedback we'll be providing is not quite the same as what a beta reader would provide, but it's not quite as in-depth as a developmental edit either. It's going to be highlighting sort of the main points of the story, looking for places where some things could be made more obvious, or where some, things that are perhaps too obvious could be taken out. Making sure that all of the questions posed in the first half of the story get answered in the latter. Making sure that all the loose ends are tied up, that kind of thing, without really doing a super deep dive.
Essentially, Meg and I are going to be writing book reports.
Yeah, pretty much. Here's our impression, here's who we liked, here's who we didn't, here's why. One thing I can recommend, Todd says, for a heavy self-edit is running a comparison between drafts and drafts afterward. It'll show all your changes as tracked, and you can ensure you didn't bungle anything along the way. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's one way to do it if you don't want to have track changes on your own manuscript. You could just have blank manuscript and then start cutting the crap out of everything and not worrying about track changes. Though, if you do utilize track changes, it'll end up with essentially the same result as a Microsoft Word's comparison tool. But some people don't like using track changes. I actually I know of an author that I'm friends with that hates track changes. So those of you who don't know about the compare tool on Microsoft Word, if you go up to the review tab and then click compare, you can actually just click compare two versions of the same document, and then it'll apply track changes to the whole thing. Super useful tool.
I love track changes personally. Especially, whenever you're changing someone's words, it's good for them to be able to see exactly what it is you changed, and then they can decide if they want to keep that change or not.
Also, the useful thing about track changes as an editor, and just any editor who claims that they are flawless is lying to you.
Oh, 100%.
So, because there will be. So Meg has edited some of my work, and she'll have used track changes. And the useful thing about track changes is that you can just, as an author, go through and see every single thing that your editor has done to your manuscript and accept or reject or modify it. Mm-hmm. And once or twice in Meg's edit in the track changes, there was a random letter that didn't make sense. And I'm like, oh, that's an accident of hers, so I delete it and then I accept it. And so that happens. I've done that to people too. And there's one author that I've worked with who, when he's going through his my edits with him, he'll screenshot me funny things, and I'll be like, sorry. But that's why track changes is useful, because you can just make sure that when an editor is doing 100,000 words, there's going to be one or two mistakes. Just like with any book that gets published, there's still, even after 5 people have had their eyes on it, there's one or two mistakes.
So can
I found the thing that every author has in common is that once they open their first paper copy of their book, their eyes fall immediately onto a typo.
Yep.
So I want to know if I'm a weird author in that every time I open my manuscript, I save a new copy before I start writing on it. Is that?
Yeah, you're weird. That's weird.
That is weird.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure. I date it. I date it the day that I make the changes. And then I save it and I close out of it, and then the next time I open it, the first thing I do is save the new copy with the new date, and then I start writing.
Interesting. Why? Why do you do that?
I'm afraid I'm going to lose something, and I want to be able to look back. It saved me probably 10 or 12 times looking back and finding things that I had accidentally deleted, and then, I don't know, it's probably me being extra cautious, but yeah, that's the way I do it, and I back things up locally, and then I send a copy to Google Docs, or my drive, so that I don't I'm just very sensitive about losing things, or and then the other side of it too is I like to be able to feel free to just go in any direction on a particular day, and then if I'm not feeling it, I can start where I was at before,
go back to a previous version.
So it's not efficient from a file storage perspective, but it's like my safety blanket. It's my Linus blanket that I keep with me wherever I go. I know that I've got hundreds of copies of my manuscripts.
it's definitely efficient and secure. I have been using. I saw. If you didn't notice, I stopped screen sharing because we're kind of done talking about that. Gloria, great sample. I think Meg and I are both excited to read your book within the coming months. DC, on file saving and everything, I have started writing with a program called Dabble.
Okay.
Which is like Scrivener, but not Scrivener. But it cloud saves everything.
Okay.
And the desktop app syncs with the web browser app. And so as long as Dabble doesn't die, my words are saved.
Right. It just doesn't allow you the ability to go back to a point in time when your manuscript was in a different position.
Well, it saves it. It organizes everything by chapter and scene. So like if I didn't like a scene, I could just like label that scene as this was edited on this time, this was written on this date, and then just go to the next scene.
I'm sure modern technology has made my process completely obsolete. But I just wanted to put it out there. I wanted to out myself because if there's other weird people out there, now they know.
Yeah.
So if anyone else does what DC does, tell him so he doesn't feel alone.
Yeah, or don't.
If there's one thing that you take away from this live stream, it's that DC writes weird.
Yep.
Yes.
That's the important message.
They didn't know, I mean, like, they can scroll down in the description and find my books, and then it's just blatantly apparent that I write weird. Or just follow me on Twitter. Like, my next tweet is going to be something with zero substance and just whatever. All snark.
So this is a question maybe to leave everyone on, but also for both of you, because all three of us have published books. After you published your book, did you find a mistake in your book, or did you find something that's not necessarily a typo, but like you read it back like a month later and you're like, dang it, I could have written that so much better?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So the reason why I'm bringing that up, and I'm curious what other authors who have published already who are tuning into this might say, is just that, like, Meg and I edit. We love editing people's work. But just as a reminder always that, like, you can edit forever. And Meg kind of emphasized that throughout here. And I think that's one of the reasons why Gloria's sample was very difficult to edit, because it's written well already, that you can edit words forever, but then at some point you kind of just have to be like, you know what, I like how it sounds, it's understandable, people will get my story, and I'm going to hit publish and write the next thing. And then 2 months later you're going to look at it again and be like, well, I used the wrong word there.
There are 33 mistakes in my first book that are still out there. Not that I've counted, but I've totally counted. If anyone on the stream wants to go buy my book and find them, there's some kind of prize at the end. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'll give you your money back because you've read a book with 33 mistakes in it.
So it was caught before the book got published, but my but advanced review copy readers got this version. A few of them did.
Yep.
First of their kind had the most unfortunate, and Meg knows what I'm talking about, the most unfortunate typo in it, which was the public pubic distinction.
Yes! I love it.
Which, the reason why that's funny to bring up is that in law school, for those of you who don't know, I went to law school. In one of my legal writing classes, they literally told us to Control F that word in everything we write, because the word public is used so much in legal jargon. Yep. They're just like, no matter what, you need to search it. And by the way, in my job as a lawyer, I have definitely come across government documents that have made that mistake. Yes. So even government writers make mistakes. Yeah, it happens to everybody.
Happens to the best of us.
Well, and that's the thing too. I think what, especially independent authors, which is going to be almost all your clientele, correct? Independent authors. Mm-hmm. I think there's this...
A large majority.
Yeah, I'd say it's 50-50.
Really? You got some trad pubs coming your way? Just to polish before they query, or...
A mix of both.
Okay. Interesting.
And there's a lot of, I think a lot of people are kind of missing that there's a lot of authors out there now that are, I'm writing this book, I want to get it edited, I'm going to try querying, but I'm confident enough in this manuscript that after I query, I'm just going to go straight to indie publishing. And there's plenty of indie published authors who are indie publishing, and then they're writing another book, and they're like, I'm going to query this one, but then if it doesn't work, then there's a lot, people are all over the place on how they're doing their writing process.
So from my experience, people tend to not get their books edited if they are going to query. Tend to. I'm not saying that's... But so the whole point I'm making is that indie authors are competing with traditionally published authors, major publishers that are putting out book after book after book that have a trove of editors that can put it through the paces. And so there is this gut instinct of trying to put out a pristine, perfect product. And what I want to tell indie authors, anybody who's still watching, there are 6 of us, or 5 because I think I'm logged into the stream. But whomever is watching, is a bird in your hand is worth 2 in the bush. Meaning, publishing that book, you're going to find out exactly how good it is. And then what's nice about indie publishing is you can go back and edit it. Now, I caution you on that as well. Yeah, if you find a ton of mistakes, fine, go back and edit it and re-release it. But the other side of it too is, and Todd actually makes this point in the chat, is nothing is ever going to be perfect. You can edit to the nth degree and you're still going to find issues. And if you improve with each book and you have a quality editing process, the other eyes, I always say you should have other eyes on your book, whether that is a formal editing process or not. I don't want to bring that into this stream and cost and who should publish and who shouldn't. That's not the point. The point is I want you to publish. The point is I want you to get it out there. And don't have don't be too nervous about getting it out there because it's not edited well. If somebody is taking a look at it, if you've had a couple sets of eyes on it, just go forward. If it's good enough, it's good enough, and hit that publish button.
Yep.
Though I will say, depending on your goals in publishing, before you hit that publishing button, know what your plan for what you want to present to the world. Make sure you have that plan established. Don't have people look at it and then slap a cover on it and hit publish. Know what your plan is. Maybe your plan is to just get it out there, but have your plan ready too.
Yeah, because I know an author who published a first draft and made a lot of money off of it. And it's very frustrating to me who didn't do that. And so that's why I just, it is what it is. If you hit the marketing gold, you hit the right time with the right genre, with the right story, people are going to look past a poorly edited book. And and when I say poorly edited, I mean poorly edited. But
he's talking about my book. No, I'm just.
I absolutely not.
Rude.
I'm just kidding.
No, I reserve to talk about you behind your back, CD. I wouldn't do that on live stream. I mean, I've got principles. No, I'm just saying. Don't publish your first draft. I will say that. I am against that. Don't publish your first draft. But don't wait to publish your 10th draft either. Maybe I'll put some parameters around it. So there you go.
Make a plan. Drop a plan.
Yep. Any other parting words? We've streamed for quite a bit, and we got through our 500 words. I'll while you guys are thinking of that, if there's anybody in chat who has any other editing questions, not even related to this, if it's just editing about your manuscript, feel free to drop those. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up in the next minute or two, so get those chats in if you still have them.
My number one recommendation, the final thing I want to say, is that anyone watching who is thinking about getting an editor, do not work with an editor if they do not provide you a sample edit. What we just did is forecasting to Gloria and for the previous 2 episodes, Ashley and Serena, the way that both Meg and I work as editors, and some people will like it, some people won't like it. if you just no matter what, make sure before you work with an editor that you know whether or not you're going to work well with them.
I would add on to that as well, and only, I wouldn't normally even think of this, but only because I have seen editors asking people to do this, I would add, do not go into debt to pay for editing.
No.
Don't do that. Especially if you've never published before. No matter how good an editor is, they cannot tell you how your book will perform on the market. They cannot guarantee that you're going to make your money back. If you're not comfortable with the price that's quoted to you, then get a different quote or find another way, but don't go into debt for an editor.
The other side of that is, I do believe people deserve to be paid for their work. So the flip side is, if you are getting a quote back, if you get 3 quotes and they're similar, don't try to lowball editor. You have to be reasonable, and you kind of have to shop around. But I think I said that I actually did a video, not the last video released, was one of the mistakes I made self-publishing was going into debt for my editing services. And if you don't have the cash on hand, you really need to, in my opinion, just slow down a little bit. Sell some things that you don't need, or take a second job, or just save any extra money you have. Basically invest in yourself as an author, believe in yourself as an author, and take that money and put it towards your book. If your book doesn't do well, yeah, you put money in, but you're not paying interest on that. You haven't changed your relationship with that book, and you can just move on. It's just money put into it. Whereas if you've got that next payment on the credit card, or that next personal loan payment, or whatever it is, it just really changes your dynamic there.
I think DC. Go ahead, Meg.
Well, I was going to say, I do this, and I'm sure there are other editors who do it. I set up payment plans with 0 interest on them.
Yeah.
So that you don't go through a creditor. So if you can find an editor who does that and work with a private business instead of getting a loan through a financial company, which are super strict on their payment dates and collecting interest, because that's how those companies make their money. If you can do payment plans directly through your editor, that's much better than putting it on a credit card or taking out a personal loan.
I want to call out DC's comment about making sure people who provide you services are paid. That is always something as an author when you're thinking about hiring an editor. Just keep that, those price points in mind, and thinking about the amount of hours that someone might be working on your document. And so different types of editing require different amounts of time. So a proofread is going to be faster than a line edit. Developmental edits, depending on what the book needs, are going to take certain amounts of time. And so just think through, if someone quotes you $1,000 for a 100,000 word manuscript, then think, okay, so if I was going to pay them a living wage of $15 an hour, whether or not that's a living wage, we'll argue that elsewhere, right, but let's just say that that's the living wage, $15 an hour, then they're telling me that they're going to work, 66 hours. Did I do that math right? 66 hours on my book.
So that's a week and a half.
Yeah. And so you're like, okay, that means this person's committing a week and a half, and I'm committing to pay them $15 an hour for this book. And so think, now if someone quotes you $400, either you are paying them for a 100,000 word manuscript, either you're paying them below minimum wage, or they're not spending a ton of hours on your book. Now, they may be a really good editor who can do that. That's totally possible. But just always think about that either you are actually not paying them a living wage, or they're not committing 66 hours to your book.
Right. Yeah, it's a fine balance. I think
always just be thinking about it.
That's the importance of asking around, getting personal referrals if you can. I know a couple of editors that I would refer to people. They're in front of me right now. So, we did all this because it's good content. We did all this because I think it's a great service to provide the writing community, but seriously, anybody who's watched this long especially, consider reaching out to CD and Meg and getting their services and working with them. You're going to get a quality edit at a competitive price, and you have their resume over the course of 3 videos. You know what you're going to get with working with them. And so I want to thank them for coming on Writers Row, doing this. I know we're the platform for them, but it's great content. It's things that you don't even think you want to see. Like, how do we make editing fun and enjoyable and exciting? And yet we've had no less than 5 people watching this for an hour and a half. and so, no, I can't emphasize it enough. This has been a great experience, and you guys are always welcome on Writers Row, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
You got to be careful with those invitations. I'll just show up in the middle of your recordings.
What's up, guys? I'm just
all right. It's much later for me than it is for you all, so I am gonna sign off and probably call it.
Cool.
But thank you, DC, for giving Meg and I this opportunity to test this idea that I think was fun. So
yep. Appreciate it.
I completely agree. Thank you for the platform.
Yep.
And for hanging out with us and giving your input.
Yep.
Right.
Thanks, CD. Thanks, Meg. And everybody watching. Y'all. We'll catch you next time. Thanks.
See y'all.
And now I have to find the stop button on the stream. And people heard me say that. And I'm okay with it.